announcement before we introduce our next speaker. At 4:30 today, after all 8 speakers have concluded, we'll have a table on my left and a table on my right, and one gentleman joining us from Memphis, Tennessee, live on the Skype screen. And that's when we're going to take all your questions. So a lot of you writing, just remind you, please capture your questions and thoughts while each speaker is speaking, and we'll take those questions between 4:30 and 5. Also, we have this evening, after the Constitutional Banquet with Tom Tancredo, at about 8:30, we'll all be meeting the speakers and such at the lounge here at the Doubletree. If you want to meet and mingle and make new friends and talk with us some more, we'd love to invite you along. Let's see, a couple of the talking points. I think I've covered. Actually, also the feedback form, I think it's called the convention feedback sheet. Make your comments and notes along the way and tell us how you really feel. Okay. I'm actually just buying a few seconds as folks are taking advantage of a brief break moment. But we do have a schedule. I need to stay on it, so I'm going to introduce our next speaker. It is imperative that you listen very, very closely to what our next speaker has to say. This presentation, The Great Coup of 1913, will lay out the important foundation of knowledge as to how we lost our independence and our republic. And Paul St. John will arm you with 2 very specific action items and some other action items as well that you can apply to getting this country back on track. Let's talk about our next speaker, Paul St. John. Paul has been active in the patriotic movement since he served in the United States Army as a member of the Green Berets 5th Special Forces Unit in Vietnam. During this time, he saw firsthand how America was not allowed to win the war. After returning home, Paul worked with G. Edward Griffin, the author of The Creature of Jekyll Isle. How many folks have read that book, The Creature of Jekyll Isle? Gotta go get that book. G. Edward Griffin, The Creature of Jekyll Isle. Paul St. John worked with G. Edward Griffin, the author of this material, and Paul became the Florida Committee Chairman for Freedom of Choice in Cancer Therapy. In the 1980s, he organized and led a successful movement to stop food irradiation in Florida. Paul is a true patriot, instructor, and a successful activist. He's a recent graduate of the National Center for Constitutional Studies and is currently working with the Save America Foundation to further develop its educational series on a variety of informative topics. In 1913, 3 radical acts of Congress laid the groundwork for the collapse of the United States dollar, the financing of the New World Order, and the destruction of the major checks and balances of the states. The 3 acts have all contributed to the virtually unrestrained power that the federal government is exercising over all of us today. Paul St. John will now inform us as to what we can do to reverse this unconstitutional revolution that started 87 years ago. Paul will be joining us now to discuss the Constitution of the United States of America, the Great Coup of 1913, how we lost our sovereignty, what happened, who's behind this, naming names you need to know, and the importance of understanding the 16th and 17th Amendment. Again, please give a warm grand junction. Welcome to my friend Paul St. John.
Well, historically, you probably didn't get a memo that there was a coup. Let's look at what a coup is. A coup. Show up there? Probably not. Okay. A coup comes from the French word coup d'état, which means a sudden decisive change in government. And that's what happened in 1913. What 2/3 of the coup was illegal, unconstitutional, but it was decisive, and it was rapid. Where do I point this to change the slide? Tell me where to point this. Not changing the slide.
We have a setting with technology experts. We'll be with you in a moment.
three parts to this coup, and I'll list them in order. I'll tell you about the planning of them, who engineered this coup, and why it's the fruits and the germination of what happened in 1913 is threatening your life, liberty, and your property. Next slide, please. Okay, so here's the three parts of the coup. The passage of the 16th Amendment, the so-called Income Tax Amendment, the passage of the 17th Amendment, which provided for the direct election of senators, and the passage of the Federal Reserve Act. Here's the 16th Amendment. Congress shall have the power, and it says questionably ratified. It's questionably ratified because the Secretary of State, a man named Philander Knox, told Congress that all the states had ratified it. Two men went to, a number of years later, went to all the state houses, actually got the documents and found out that all the states had not ratified it. Three states didn't even vote on it at all. And what was told to Congress, and these books are called The Law That Never Was. Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes on incomes from whatever source is derived, without apportionment, key word, apportionment, among the several states, without regard for the census or enumeration. Apportionment and census are very important to understand. But I would also like you to know that the term income, nowhere in the IRS code, a book about that big, is defined. What income is not defined in the IRS code. There's a reason for that. Now, here is the congressional constitutional authority for all taxation. And taxes can be broken down into two types of taxes: direct taxes and indirect taxes. So let's look at this constitutional authority. It says representatives, direct taxes shall be apportioned among the several states and may be included within the Union according to their representative numbers. What does that mean? The whole reason for the census is to find out how many people, so we can have the People's House, the House of Representatives, and also to pay direct taxes. Direct taxes are called capitation taxes. That is, the government comes to you directly and wants the money. All direct taxes are taxes on inalienable rights, like the right to have private property. Indirect taxes, on the other hand, are taxes on what are called privileges. All indirect taxes can be avoided. If you don't like the indirect tax on a loaf of bread, don't eat bread. If you don't like the indirect tax on gasoline, ride a bike. Now, those are important foundations to understand. The taxing authority, no capitation or other direct tax shall be laid unless proportioned to the census and enumeration thereof. What does that mean? It means that you cannot charge, say the government wants to pay for a war. How it used to happen before this coup took place is that the bill would be sent to the states with accountability. The governors had to raise the money. That's how the Civil War was paid for. The War of 1812, that's how it was paid for. There was accountability. And